Hi, Nate. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited to talk about this. I'm a nerd for it. There's a video on the Muzie group. A studio is never finished. I was in here this morning with this, installing one of my lights in a way that works better. Anybody watch that and see why I was using this, go to the Muzie teachers group. I posted a video there.
That's awesome. I love it. I mean, that's the truest thing ever. I think like the guitars behind me, it's one of those things trying to set those up.
Yes.
Days of leveling, and then you set them all up, get all the mounts perfect, just right, stick the guitars on, and then you realize that guitar headstocks are all different sizes. So,
Yeah.
no matter how hard you try, there's always a little more work to be done.
There really is. I used to have the most boring backdrops. It was pretty much that cabinet back there.
Yeah.
And I started watching a lot of YouTube, and the really good YouTubers have cool backdrops.
Absolutely.
And I try to not make mine too distracting, but also all my stuff is over here.
Yep.
But I also like to put a little personality of who I am. Like, I love to play chess. I'm a total beginner, but love to do that. I love to listen to music, that kind of stuff. And I was thinking, we talked about this empty space, whether you thought I should fill it. I'm going to hang up the Sawzall.
Do it. It's just the mount on the wall. It's the symbolization of never finished.
Yes.
or like a broken image, like a broken mirror or something. Like maybe that's bad luck. But something to symbolize that you're never done.
Yes, exactly. Studio is never finished. It's only abandoned.
Yeah, I love it. That's actually very true.
For anybody that's listening to this, though, that feels intimidated by all that, you really don't have to start with all this stuff. A lot of teachers teach somewhere like their bedroom with their back to a wall.
Absolutely.
And go ahead.
That's I was gonna say that's what before I hung this up. This was basically a bedroom with a back to a wall. Eventually it became an office, but it used to just be try to hide in the corner so they couldn't see your sheets or something.
Yes, and that's so important. I can't tell you how many, and I see this more with students because I'm teaching students all day. But how many views I see on YouTube of somebody posting their video, often trying to promote their lessons, and their bed is right behind them. And that is so instantly unprofessional. It can't make you look more amateur to be like, I'm in my room.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and the frustrating thing is, like, sometimes that's all you've got, but there's a lot you can do with a little, so it's as simple as, I mean, you can even blind out the background with just some lights. If you just point a couple of lights in the right direction, you can't see what's behind you. If that's the bare minimum, I mean, I've seen tons of people just hang a bed sheet. That honestly, that works fine too. It's
works so well.
But I agree, especially like the unmade bed in the corner, or something like that. It becomes very distracting. Actually, as we were talking about the door, like if you had the door open, that would be incredibly distracting, right?
Especially with the toddler.
Right. I would see into the house if people were moving around, or it would become a focal point instead of you, which is, of course, what we're supposed to be paying attention to during class.
Yeah.
So, important to center yourself.
I bet you've seen it all too, like people in their bathrobes and, just all that, luckily in their bathrobe.
Yes. That does help.
Although I did teach 2 students in a row who were in their pajamas yesterday.
Yeah.
But hey, whatever. They bring a glass of wine, whatever they want to do. It's about them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think, well, one of the things I think is kind of nice about online lessons and that flexibility is that if you want to just come hang out, glass of wine, sit and do your lesson, like, that's really, like, it's okay. Like, if you're a casual learner, adult student, that's really not that big of a deal. I think that's actually kind of nice. It actually offers a comfortable entry or environment to learning music. So if that's how you want to approach it, then I think that's actually a fantastic option to be able to offer.
And I only teach adults, so just if anyone does teach kids, I'm not advocating for kids here.
No, I think it works both ways though, because like one of the things that's kind of nice is like with I have a couple of younger students, and especially like holidays, they'll show up in like a bathrobe and all of their pajamas and have a guitar, and it's like it's not the it's definitely not ideal, but it's also not the worst. Like if they're comfortable and they're having fun, then I know we can at least conduct a productive lesson. It might not have been the topics I wanted to cover originally. I might need to rejig what we're actually going to do if they're in that mode. But I think that welcoming environment that you can create is pretty unique to being online. Because obviously I wouldn't show up to your house for my lesson in my bathrobe and with a bottle of wine with me. I mean, it'd be a weird lesson.
Same for the teacher. I've seen a lot of examples of somebody, I teach in a t-shirt all the time. I don't consider this to be unprofessional for my brand, but I see a lot of it's a ripped up t-shirt or, things like that. The collar's pulled down to here. There's a lot of things that can make somebody look less professional. And when a student signs up for a lesson with any of us, they are really crossing their fingers that we know what we're doing. Absolutely. And even if we do, it doesn't take many things that are wrong to look like we don't. And then we've lost that confidence they had in us, and we've lost their money.
Absolutely.
Which is why most teachers are in business, is to keep the lights on.
Absolutely. No, I think that's very true. I also think that one of the things that teachers, everyone deals with this, but teachers, we all deal with the self-promotion aspect of business, where 9 times out of 10, of course you can work for studios, but if you're the one running the show and you're an independent teacher, then you're probably putting your face on the ad that is going out to your town or your community or the world wide, so that first image that they see from you, that's got to be something professional and polished. And it's one of those things that I don't think you really learn how to do that until you start doing it. It's hard to teach professionalism in a sense. You know what I mean? Whereas like you're trying to say like just stay on top of everything, but that's sort of like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's a lot. And just for anyone feeling intimidated, I don't think most people built their whole pro level studio in one sitting. I certainly didn't. All of this happened a piece at a time. Of course, you can't see what's over there, but I posted a picture of that in the Muzie teachers group today as well on Facebook. But it doesn't, you could put it together, every bit of it in a weekend if you want, but don't feel like you have to do that. You can start with a lamp. It doesn't take much to still be teaching music lessons while you go.
Absolutely. I think that's really important, is that and on both ends, like students, we don't expect students to have high fidelity microphones and pedal boards and cameras and microphone. We just expect them to have a device. If you're trying to teach online lessons, start there. Go get a device. If you've got a laptop, a phone, an iPad, something that connects to the internet with a camera and a microphone, start there. You can start. That's fine. But I agree. I think that if you want to take it to the level where people are seeking you out for lessons, and you're not the one having to go and hound down all of the students, having a wait list, being in a position where you are financially stable, where your prices are increasing because you have high demand for your services, and life's getting better and better. I think, that's where we're trying to help people get to, but you have to start with something. Like quite literally, one of the things that they make now is webcams with ring lights built into them. So 2 birds, 1 stone. They've also, most webcams have a microphone built into them as well. So if you get a webcam ring light microphone combo, that's one thing that solves 3 of your external components right out of the gate. So if you've got a cheap laptop and that one camera, you're already looking so much more professional than if you've got the dark, like, here, let's put it into reality. So this is the setup with the ring light on, and this is the ring light not. It's like the difference is literally half my face. Right?
I'm in the dark now.
Exactly. It's like you need to be able to see and conduct a lesson effectively. So lighting is really important. It's one of those things I think it's overlooked too, because people just assume, oh, they'll be able to see me. It's a video call. I've got a lamp over there. Well, actually,
or they don't know what to do.
Yeah, right. Or exactly. You do, and there's too many options online. Like when you go online and you're like lights, talk about lighting setups that go a little awry. You can always get one of these.
Yeah.
This is what happens if you go too far down the rabbit hole, right? So
been there.
It's one of those things where, like, we're not saying you need a professional lighting setup like that. You don't need to be shooting a movie. A simple $15 ring light, literally, as we just showed you, makes the world of difference.
$25.
Exactly.
Right here. I've got 2 of them. Came with the arm and everything.
Oh, nice. That's perfect. Yeah. You can just swing it to wherever you need it to be.
Got one on each side. Can put it where I need to be. I teach fiddle and mandolin. So, like, where I'm sitting here is my fiddle position. I don't have the fiddle handy. May need different lighting to be able to see the fiddle because of where it is.
Right.
I also have an adjustable chair. So I actually teach mandolin like this to get the mandolin in frame.
Oh, interesting. Right. Because it's more of a, okay, that makes sense. So and that's exactly one of those things, is that having the equipment and the setup, but where you can change it in literally a push of a button or, push a lever, where you don't need to go out and, rip apart your room to reset for the next lesson.
Yeah.
I think that's another part of it, is like we were trying to say with the big lights, is like, you don't need to go, like, setting up a pro level studio doesn't necessarily mean spending a fortune. It doesn't necessarily mean buying every single piece of gear that you see that's available. That's not what we're talking about.
Doesn't mean you can't, though.
Right. Oh, hey, we're musicians. We're all a little guilty of excess when it comes to our favorite things. So I think as musicians, we can all relate to the necessary spending on fun things to play with.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? I think that you can, like, for literally, like we're saying, $25, you can get a ring light, and that changes the difference between being able to see you correctly and not. And any content that you put out, any photos you take from your computer, screenshots, those are going to look drastically more professional than if you've got the Darth Vader look, going on where you can't see half my face. So, I think immediately that presentation that you put out as a businessman, because that's the thing, is at the end of the day, you're the CEO. You're the face of your own business. You've got to be the brand. So if you're not putting out that polished professional look, there are 1,000 other music teachers in the vicinity that I can go and get lessons from. That's also something that's, you got to keep in mind. There is competition. So you've got to stay in front of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I just want to add for, I was moving this around. I'm using a MacBook here.
Yep.
And it's on a stand. So I can get a lot of different camera angles. I can even get the student camera angle. Get whatever I want. And you have a similar thing because you're standing. So I'm moving the camera, you're moving you.
I usually just move me. Typical setup for a lesson is this, and then I just grab my guitar off over there. The nice thing about this is when I'm holding my guitar here, you can see my hands. So if I want to talk about strumming patterns or some overarching topic, you've got it. I can then step up, and you're now seeing close up. And I have other cameras that I can turn on that are even closer to my hands that zoom in. So the frame is like that kind of thing, So that setup allows me the flexibility to, and I can talk about like beats by literally like moving my body. And, I can kind of dance around, and it gives me a little bit more flexibility for actually conducting the lessons. And I'd go crazy if I sat down all day. So, for my own mental needs and like physical well-being, I love this flexibility of being able to pick and choose sort of what works.
And you have to be comfortable, or else you're going to just put something out there of if you feel uncomfortable, the worst thing that can happen, and the most likely thing, is the student doesn't pick that up as you don't like your chair. They pick it up as you don't like them.
100%. Any it's like the whole attitude. I remember when I was a kid, when you're going into the classroom, the teacher would always be like, keep that stuff outside the classroom. When you're in the classroom, the outside world doesn't matter. Leave your problems at the door, kind of thing. And as a teacher, like, you really do need to embody that. It's not to say that you can't have problems. We all do. But, when you come into the studio, make it so you enjoy being in there. Yeah. Make it so that when you walk through those doors or sit down in that corner or whatever, that you're like, cool, I'm ready to go. Not
game face.
Not that you're fighting it to get to where you need to be. I think comfort is a big aspect of being able to teach effectively.
It is. I put a lot of research into finding a chair that works for me. Some of my students think I look like Darth Vader. That's the only part that's not ideal. But I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", and I need a chair that works. Also, when playing, I often get into positions that'll hurt my back. So I had to find a chair that would let me always have to hold my cable like the Cowardly Lion so I don't get it all caught up. But I had to find one that would let me sit up straight.
Yeah.
And it had enough support. This is not a super soft chair. I need support for the sit bones.
Absolutely.
Makes huge difference. Might be totally the wrong chair for someone else, but you've got to find one that works, and don't do like I did and go years in a chair that is really uncomfortable where you're like this all the time, just trying to not hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why with the standing desk is here for me, because I was doing the exact thing. An IKEA chair for a couple of years. I mean, not ideal, right? So after a while, I was like, you know what? Like, I think my back was constantly hurting, which put me in a bad mood, which meant that when I was teaching, I wasn't exactly the friendliest of teachers anymore. So like people don't think about that correlation all that often. It is a direct line to, if you're uncomfortable, your lessons will suffer. And, I think, and like you said, students won't realize that you're angry at the chair. Like it will come across as you're dissatisfied with them or, something. And that makes them, not, because something is fun. I don't personally have this experience, but I hear it all the time of like the evil music teacher that was like, slap your hands, or was always mean to you, or like, you know what I mean? Like that very stereotypical trope of like the mean music teacher. Fortunately, not part of my education. Luckily, but I hear it all too often. And it's one of those things where it's like, don't let people think that of you. Like, make sure that you're putting out an image that is not that. That is, unless you are that way, then maybe don't teach. So
or figure out why it is that you're putting that out there and fix it.
Work on that so that you do enjoy what, or if you've gotten to, actually, that's a good point. If you've gotten to the point where you've been teaching for years, decades, and you're not enjoying it anymore, why? What went wrong? Take a step back. Think about what you could do to revitalize. Like I didn't, but now I use a lot of games in my teaching. And now I actually make a lot of games for Muzie, and I use those in my own teaching. And I found that was something that like I enjoy doing. So like when I'm having fun, it translates to my student. They're clearly, they see that I'm genuinely enjoying it. And that brings enjoyment to them, and we bond way better, and the lesson is much more effective.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of little things like that is worth thinking about. And like we said, is try not to get overwhelmed with it. It's not do all of this at once. It's a lifetime of progress. And like we said, it's never done. It's abandoned.
And you're going to have to try a lot of things too. Although one of the reasons we wanted to do this session is because we have tried most of it. So help save people time with things that just don't really work. I've had a lot of lights that didn't really do the job. The color of the light bulbs, I had Edison bulbs in this ceiling light here, and it made me look yellow. That had to change. Knowing those kinds of things, Edison bulbs would be pretty cool if I were teaching in person. Looks neat, does not make a functional studio.
You know what translates similarly is, I don't know if this will work on command, but hey, Google, change the studio light to blue. I thought this was going to be really cool, but
interesting.
It doesn't really translate well over video. You just in the room, it's actually pretty cool. There's like this blue hue now everywhere. In a video, it looks like this weird little blue blob in the corner of the room.
It does.
It's one of those things where like almost a cool idea, doesn't quite execute over video. So in person, good idea. Online, probably not worth your time.
Yeah.
And now, if anything, it just becomes distracting in the corner. There's this like orb over my shoulder.
It's like the beginning of a Doctor Who episode.
Yeah, right?
You're about to get it, and the rest of the episode will be about that. One thing I did find, I added lighting recently, and I tried all the colors I liked, like what you have there. Now, mine's not connected to Google, but I found the only thing that worked, at least in my studio, is you have to go with something really pale. So that's the palest blue setting just about that I can find. And more than that can be distracting anyway.
Yeah.
But it just needs to not be, that bright red looks really cool, but you're going to look like you're in a fire or something.
Exactly, right? Yeah, it's where like this has become a distracting blue orb now over. So like just to save us, hey Google, change the studio light to white. And then that's a little better. But even though like it's one of those things, I put that lamp there in hopes it would help brighten the room because I was like, hey, the lighting's not perfect, so I added that. Found out that lamp's not really very effective for this kind of thing. Doesn't pick up correctly. But these ring lights are perfect. They are exactly what I needed. So like we're saying, test a couple different things, but we've already done a lot of that. Like microphones is a big one. I mean, I've gone through dozens of different microphones. Yep. And here's one I wouldn't recommend. So this is I use this for a different purpose. That's why I have it. So this is an SM57 by Shure. One of the best microphones ever built. It really is.
The workhorse.
It is not a vocal mic though. So if you want to talk through this microphone, you have to talk through the microphone like this. You can't talk to it like your microphone that is further away. So this I use for direct like amp recording and stuff. It just swings down off the desk. But I have like a Blue Yeti and other microphones that are vocal mics that can pick up my voice from a couple feet away. So it's, those kinds of things, like you might not think about it, but just a microphone isn't really the solution. You want to make sure you're getting, if you're teaching and you're using your voice, a vocal microphone. But like if you're a drum teacher and you want to mic up all your drums to then be sent through the interface, SM57 is the go-to microphone for that job. So it's like, I can't say don't buy an SM57 because it just depends what you need. What scenario are you in? So
absolutely,
but I think it's one of those things. I personally run two setups at the same time. So I run this microphone swing arm, I have two different mics. One's a normal vocal mic. I'm not sure what brand. I think it's a MXL or something. But I run that and my interface. So that's running through the interface with the guitar. And the signal that the students get on the other end is original, raw, dry. Well, I run it through a pedal board so I can give it a bit of, effect. So it's not so dry, but it's the original raw signal, meaning that it's not being impacted by a microphone externally. So when I play my guitar, they're hearing the actual output from the pickups, not the microphone picking it up from the speakers, which of course isn't as good of a quality.
For anybody out there too who doesn't know what we're talking about when we're talking about interfaces, a lot of mics like the Blue Yeti is going to plug right into your computer. Yes. That's all you need. The mics like we're using have XLR cables, and that's the one that's little round thing, about a ½ inch round, has 3 prongs in it. Those don't plug into your computer, but something like this does. And this is just a Scarlett Solo. It's a really entry model thing, but it works great. I've got one mounted under my desk. Yep, and I can actually reach the knobs here, which is great if I want to.
Yep.
Whatever it is, I've got a toddler and a dog. If there's noise and my student's playing for me, the interface allows me to get rid of the audio just for a moment if I want to. They're extremely useful, and it opens up your possibilities so much because you can use, this mic, I could back off pretty far. And you can still hear me even though it's getting quieter.
Absolutely. And it's good quality. That's the thing. One thing, running Muzie, I run into every day is I want the best quality audio for my students. Well, the real answer is get a good microphone. Like I hate to say it, but the actual answer to that question is get yourself a really good mic, because the microphone that's built into your computer, and honestly, the ones that are built into iPads and phones are most of the time even worse, I think. The problem is they're tiny, like physically teeny tiny. And if you know anything about how a microphone actually works, it's physically picking up sound, well, like air pressure is being pushed on the microphone, and that's what it transmits over. So if it's got a tiny little area that it can pick up the air pressure, you're not going to get a full spectrum of sound, no matter what. No matter what software you're using. We, even at Muzie, we can't increase the quality of audio after the fact. That's literally not impossible yet. And if it was, I think we'd be in a very different business, you know? But it's the idea is that if you can get yourself a good microphone, and the nice thing is that what you're saying is these microphones like SM57, if that's what you need, they're like $80. Blue Yetis can range anywhere from $50 to $150. You can get microphones on Amazon that are pretty decent quality for $35, $40. You know, it doesn't have to be some over the top, you know, crazy, you know, ribbon microphone or something. It can just be a decent, bigger microphone.
I just want to demo real quick for our audience. This is, and it's not where I would always have this set up. So this is not the setup I would do teaching a lesson. You can't see my right hand. But just to compare,
yeah, that'd be great.
Here is my MacBook Pro microphone. All right, here we go. Now, the real mic. And one thing you have to watch out on the real mic, and I did make a mistake when I installed this. I can't see when it's peaking, but I can hear it. So you got to watch out for that kind of that crackle distortion if your mic is set with too high of a gain. So that's something to watch for. You know, the MacBook mic is not going to usually do that, but it's such a huge difference.
It really is. It's night and day, and that's the thing where you know, we always try to explain, like, if you're trying to get quality online lessons, audio is king. That's the number one priority. Video is great and all. Like, we can, that's easy, really. Like, transmitting good quality video, that's actually the easy part. The hard part is the high quality audio. So help us out, you know, help us out by giving us the most you can, like through the audio channel, meaning a good microphone that's picking up all of the spectrum of sound that you're producing, so that when it's coming to Muzie or one of the platforms that you're using to transmit your audio, you're actually getting all of the audio and not just this tiny crunch down channel. And of course, we understand, you know, students might not have access to all of, you know, other microphones or anything like that. And that's totally fine. At the end of the day, it's how high quality can you push to the student? What is it that you can push to the student so that when they're experiencing the lessons, it's basically perfect for them. As a good teacher, you know, we're pretty good at and adept at figuring, you know, like you're saying, the student point of view, this thing. We're pretty good at knowing if they're actually playing it right or wrong without having to see their hands the whole time, every time. It is nice when the student does choose to be in frame once in a month that they do. But, you know, I think we've gotten pretty good at figuring out what's happening without needing to actually see them.
We could teach a lesson on the phone and it would be fine. And we really want our students in most genres. I can't speak for every genre, but in mine, I would guess yours, you know, I teach bluegrass and related styles. The most important thing, along with technique, but the most important thing is being able to hear something and reproduce it. Yeah. And I'll often even hide the instrument from my student on purpose. So like, I can't see it. And I'm like, for this part, you're going to use your ear. Yep. Because it's that important.
Absolutely. And it's kind of funny because I'm teaching online, my ear gets way better by just the training it gets every day of students, you know, like doing this kind of thing halfway off frame. And they're like, I'm playing it, right? And you're like, well, yeah, you're like, I can see you're doing it right. Just move to the left.
Yeah, definitely. They're always amazed when you can see something or hear something like that too, and know
Yeah,
that know that they're using an open string or something.
right.
Honing your ear that way not only is helpful for teaching the lesson, but it just adds another level of them realizing
Absolutely.
you know what you're doing.
Absolutely. I had a really cool lesson experience a couple of weeks ago where a student had a song that was recorded by like a band in his dad's high school or something. So there's no transcriptions. There's like only one recording in existence. It's not on YouTube or Spotify or anything, So he sent me the audio file, and it's one of those where like, because this is what we do, after enough time, I was able to pick out the first couple chords pretty much right away. I was able to be like, oh, da, ba, ba, da, I just start kind of jamming through the song, and his eyes just were like, what? Like, how? And then it was a case of like, well, how did you do that? And then it was like, okay, here we go. Like now we're into the good stuff. And that now the part of our lessons is ear training and kind of taking that to the next level. So and like you said, hide your guitar, play a couple of things, hide your piano, play a couple notes, see if the students. I play a game with my students on Muzie it's a board, like a game board, and it's a bunch of notes on the staff. And then I play a note on my guitar, and they've got to figure out which note was which one did I play on the staff.
That's cool.
And so it's an ear training game, both hints and stuff, but that's the kind of thing that you can be doing. That's the thing, actually, I wanted to sort of bring up as well, is I always, the divide or this debate between online lessons versus in-person lessons. And I don't know so much if I would actually treat it that way. And I'd treat it more like they're just two forms of lessons. It's not a versus situation, in the sense that I believe now, with all the technology we have and running your studio in this effective manner we're talking about, I can do basically everything online that I used to do in person.
Yeah.
And I'm not really, I understand being able to like physically move like your students' fingers to the right keys and stuff. Fine. But honestly, I'm finding that my students are growing more independent and finding that stuff for themselves and being able to make that shift on their own because they have to, So, but I just sort of thought it might be an important topic just to kind of bring up on the side here, is that for us, we are talking about online teaching and the benefits of running a pro studio like that, but not exclusively. Like, we're not saying this is, don't do any other style, like, take these techniques and you can apply them to any kind of teaching that you might be doing.
Yeah. There's some huge advantages too that people tend to think of you mentioned it's not really a one against the other. There's these two ways to do it. People tend to think of the online as some kind of a compromise.
Right.
And after you get used to it, I mean, I've already forgotten we're not sitting in the same room like 10 times.
Absolutely.
And it helps that, we talked about last time we talked, just there's things you can do to make more of an in-person experience. So we talked about look the camera in the eye. And if I'm talking to you like this and I'm looking at you, I can see all your facial expressions, and it's great. It's really helpful. But you have to pretend you're on a phone call.
I know.
You've got to look them in the eye.
As soon as you did that, it became very distracting. As soon as you looked away, I was like, why isn't he looking? Like, my mentally something flips and is like, hey, why aren't you looking at me anymore? Like, are you not? Like, that they're looking at you on the screen, but something about not making the eye contact really does sort of mess with you.
And a lot of people tend to look down, and, learning to look someone in the eye too is something that everybody has to learn at some point. Some people do it well. I did not when I first started out teaching. I was always just very timid. You have to be so careful because I could be texting, especially put my arms up like this. I might be texting.
Yeah.
That is so insulting.
Yes. That's the thing. And I think teachers and everybody, actually, not teachers, everybody with working online and being everything online has sort of realized they can get away with a little bit more of the phone in the hand, sort of over by the side of the screen, sort of like doing this type of thing, where it's like, yeah, but we can still see that your eyes are bouncing back and forth between two different things here. Or it's like if you open another tab and you're like clearly looking like this kind of thing, it's like we can see you're not engaged in what's going on.
Yeah. And if you have to set up your computer for messages. Now, I use an iPhone, so this doesn't work for my Android students, but for some reason in Bluegrass, almost everybody I've ever met uses an iPhone. Set up your messages on your computer. I can answer a message this way. It takes one look down, but then I'm answering the message, and that's perfect for the student that's next saying, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. I can be like, okay, great. It doesn't take you away. The other big one is I have a huge external monitor. And if I'm teaching you like this, and, body language, this is a body language thing. Now, I also couldn't help but do this when I looked at it. This is two things going horribly wrong right now. I do like to train every student to know that I have a monitor here. I'll even bring it up constantly. I'll be like, they're going to do something I really need to see them. I'll say, I'm going to put you on the big screen, move them over here. Now they know I'm paying attention. Otherwise, they have no idea what I'm doing. There could be a window there and I'm like watching birds and stuff and charging them $2 a minute to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It comes across as rude, even if you're fully engaged in the lesson.
Absolutely. I love the fact what you just said there about just even making them aware in that last second of like, hey, I'm going to put you on the big screen so I've got you right there. Like for me, my big screen's right above my computer. So they're sort of in line with each other. So now I'm staring at a big screen. Now I'm staring at the computer again. So I can kind of look in the middle to see you and sort of both at the same time if needed. And, but that's the thing is making them very aware that you are looking at a screen that's got their face on it. And that's not got emails on the other half and you are typing away, wasting their time. Cause I agree, music lessons aren't cheap. Just in general, like it's an extracurricular. It's not something that is demanded. I mean, maybe your parents, but like, it's not, school's not forcing you to do it. It's something you're choosing to do. So as a teacher, I mean, these are the painfully obvious things, but like, smile, be nice, be professional, be good at your job, like actually care, things like that. Cause the student is paying you for their own and spending their own free time. So, you do have to take that kind of, extra level of responsibility to really make sure it's enjoyable. And of course, why wouldn't you? You want to grow your brand. You want to build off into a point where your lessons are $5 a minute and you don't have to teach all that often anymore,
Yeah. Got a point just to throw in there for all of you out there that are like, I don't know, I couldn't go above $30 an hour or whatever it is. Yes. There are a lot of, I live in Nashville. There are vocal teachers here teaching for $200 an hour. Yes. My chess teacher is $250 an hour, and I pay it with a smile on my face because he's engaged in my lessons. He's a complete pro. If you bring those things, and I'm learning, that has to be
right.
It also feels like a hang. And, they say people don't buy products, they buy relationships.
Yes.
We can't sell them that relationship like this. It's just never going to happen. But also, if you really do want to charge those higher prices, and you absolutely can, if you do things right, there are things that absolutely have to be done right. And these studio setup body language things, especially the body language, you can't get it wrong.
Yeah, you can't. And that's the thing. I think that like this stuff is not taught usually in class. Like this is not the stuff that most schools are going to. I got lucky. I had some really cool classes that were like literally teaching music, how to teach music, effectively. And those are actually a class I sat through, which, was a privilege, really. That's not something you're going to get. And it's definitely not going to be taught by somebody who actually knows what they're doing, like mine was, so it's one of those things where now on the other side, taking all of that knowledge from college, which was funny because I remember learning all of that stuff. And it being very like, okay, well, I guess I'll apply this when I get some students. And, it took a little while even for me to sort of be like, oh, wait, I need to actually go get some students. Like I should go find some students and now apply all this stuff that I had been learning. And that I think really helped me sort of get the ball rolling with my teaching business of being able to take those classes and courses and apply them forward. And that's basically, sort of what we're trying to offer here is the next step in this education process, because this isn't a classroom curriculum. And it's even the ones that I did, they were not talking about how to handle online lessons. This was all pre-pandemic. This was all about still, having people coming over and going to their houses and stuff like that, which maybe when we can, cool. But I like to operate on I like to operate on a world where everybody's safe, and I love teaching online now. I will not go back.
Me neither.
I'm never leaving this room. Like it's not going to change. So
and like you, I want to stay safe. I want my students to be safe. Yeah. I want my toddler to be safe.
Right. Yeah. You got to put yourself in a good environment. And the thing is that, like, we're sort of jumping back a bit, is that I strongly believe, and obviously I do have a bias to this, but I think you can without the bias can probably agree that you can produce high quality online lessons that are just as effective as in-person lessons with no extra level of effort.
100%.
Yeah, right. So I think, like, just as is. And one thing I noticed that is actually a lot of what I do day to day is sort of explaining to teachers when they come on for a demo with Muzie and they're telling me about what I sort of ask a couple of questions: is what did you do before the pandemic? So I can get an idea of what you're used to. What kind of teaching style did you have? Okay, then the question is, well, what happened after 2020? Like, what have you been doing for the last 2 years? And that's when I hear these nightmare stories of like teachers adding like 10 hours of work to their day by, sending emails and notifications and all this extra, typing up assignments and reminders and all the stuff you would have just handed a piece of paper and walked away. Now you're on extra 3 hours at the end of every class or evening trying to catch up. So a lot of what I try to do is explain that, like, there's other methodologies that you could adopt for online teaching that mirror your in-person teaching style. That you do have to do a little bit of learning. Like, there's definitely a learning curve to it, but like we're saying, I think you can mimic everything online, and then you can actually provide a whole nother layer that was never possible with in-person lessons.
I've noticed, and curious if you've noticed this, but I've noticed that my online students, which are all of them now, but I taught in person, I've been teaching for like 20 years, started online in 2014. But the online students are more focused. Yeah. And I think it's because they're at a desk and there's a certain event. And if they come to my house and we sit in some chairs back there, they're going to be like, oh, what's that CD? And the next thing we know, we're on like a listening thing. And sure, that's helpful, but it's just too distracting. Like, oh, can I try your mandolin? Will you look at mine? And just all these things that are unnecessary. Yes. They are much more focused because it feels like a class.
Yeah. You want to know what my other side thought on that one is? Yeah. Is mom and dad are around.
Yes.
There's a good chance, if not literally, that they're within earshot. If they are, like, you might be in your bedroom with the door closed, taking your lesson, but they can hear you, if you're running around and definitely not doing if they just stop hearing music, right? Then there's going to be a, hey, what's going on? Why are you doing? So I feel that actually puts a little extra level of I guess it is pressure. But I don't want to I'm not trying to say pressure in like the negative sense, but applied focus, you could say, is that it's sort of students are like, okay, well, mom and dad will get mad if I, don't do this. This is my lesson. And I agree. I think my students really, like, I have students that live relatively close to me that I've still never met in real life. Like, like in person, and I've been teaching them for a couple of years, and they're maybe 2 or 3 miles down the road. It's just, but I don't think that that's an issue or a problem or anything. And we have just as good of a relationship, like I used to be, I still am friends with my music teachers, but when I was a kid, I used to get along with them really well. And same kind of thing. Like, I will show one student, he loves Legos. I love Legos. Every few weeks I'll get, a new Lego set and show him whatever I'm working on, and he'll show me what he's working on. And we have, like, there's still a bond relationship, and you can build that through, like you said, I've forgotten again that we're not in the same room, even after we said that, you know what I mean?
Like, and you're looking at your camera too. Like, you can barely see me.
Right. It doesn't take long for you to be like, hey, this is this is an interactive environment. It's effective, it's engaging, and
Yeah.
it, you know, it really can be conducive as long as your teacher, you the teacher, are, you know, producing an effective, you know, you know, you're producing an effective environment, you're producing something of high quality, something that's polished. And that's the thing,
Yeah.
you'll learn it as you go. We all screw up. Like
Yeah.
the amount of like I'll fall over. Like I literally have tripped myself on my cables during class, you know, and like I'll end up on the floor. You know, it ends up being a good laugh, but like,
Yeah.
you know, so don't worry so much. Like the computer crashes during class, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And I think you could probably agree that most people, most parents, most students are pretty accommodating in the sense that like they're not going to be hounding on you because the Wi-Fi in the lesson wasn't great that one day. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's, you know, or you know, there's a little background noise from your roommate or something. Like those things, don't worry so much about that. Like if
Yeah.
those are the things that are stopping you from getting going, stop and get going. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
Something you mentioned about like computers crashing, and I'm going to be pulling up my email here real quick too, because I told people they could send
Oh,
questions.
actually, yeah, let's do it.
So just gonna check. But when it comes to the computer crashing and stuff, you know, there's two things here. One of them is training your students for things like, you know, probably not even one person out there that ever watched the IT crowd. But what they would do, they all worked in IT and they'd answer the phone. IT, have you tried turning it off and on again? That fixes almost everything. It's so hard to train the students, but I try to train them, restart your device, restart your internet. And for the students, I want them to do it every time because they tend to have very unreliable devices and internet. I don't restart my internet often. My wife works as a consultant downstairs. I can't just randomly restart. But also I have extremely reliable equipment on my Mac. I run Clean My Mac X. It makes sure everything is working. Training them to do that stuff is really important if you can. And the big game changer for me, you know, you mentioned these teachers wasting all this time. I was spending hours a week trying to do tech support, and that's not what I do.
Yes.
And when we first talked and I was checking out Muzie and you mentioned, oh, we'll do that, I was like, take my money.
Yeah, that, because that is what I do, you know, like, and that's exactly what we want to provide as part of just Muzie, is that level of, because this is a level of this is something, like we said, that changed suddenly, that nobody was taught how to do this, is teaching your students how to run their half of the lessons effectively.
Yeah.
Like a lot of what I tell people, I get a lot, like I'd say the number one thing that comes through my support line is bad Wi-Fi. Like that's got to be the number one issue. And 9 times out of 10, it's actually not the Wi-Fi. It's usually when if I'm like, how many programs do you currently have open on your computer? And they're like, oh, well, just Chrome. And then I'm like, well, how many icons across that bottom bar have a little white dot under it? And they're like, oh, Chrome, Spotify, Safari, YouTube, Muzie. I'm like, okay, close all of those and then go to Chrome. How many tabs do you have open? Oh, just 2. Okay, do you have any other windows of Chrome open? Oh, yeah, I've got one. That one's got 33 tabs on it. You know, it's like, close that. You know, things, or how many Google Homes do you have? Oh, we've got 9. There's one in every room. That is taking up a huge portion of your Wi-Fi. You know, it's things like this that there's no guide to how to run better, like how to speed your Wi-Fi. It's not really, you can't make it faster. All you can do is take things off of the network, and optimize in that way. So a lot of what I do is explaining to students that, or really telling teachers to explain to the students that if they've got all these extra devices, like in this room right now, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 internet connected devices that are like obviously connected to the internet right now in this room, right? That's in the office on the other side. That's going to have at least 6 more. the TV downstairs, the 2 Google Home. You know what I mean? Like we're talking like 30 devices by the time we get to it. No matter how good of a Wi-Fi package you've purchased, it wasn't designed to hold 35 concurrent devices on the network. You know?
Plus your neighbor who figured out your password.
Yeah, exactly, right? Things you don't think about though, like security cameras, your Nest thermostat. Don't take your Nest thermostat off the Wi-Fi, please.
No, I can't live without that.
Do not do that. I'm just saying there is a lot of stuff connected to the Wi-Fi that you might not have been aware of. If Wi-Fi is your issue, start there. Start by purging the items that don't really need it. I mean, airplane mode is available on pretty much everything. So, I think you can even just tell the Googles to do it too. So, it's like that's a place to start. And like we were saying, if you're starting with just a laptop and a ring light, help yourself by making sure that those other things are not taking away any, potential bandwidth that you might need for your lessons.
Yeah. Something that helps me a lot too, that if this is possible for teachers to do, I recommend you do this. It will save your butt. Is I have my normal internet, which, by the way, don't have great internet options, or I didn't think I did in my neighborhood. Then I found out Comcast Business would bring internet to my house. I know I hated Comcast pretty hard.
Right.
Comcast Business has better customer service. You get someone on the phone faster. The trouble is it's going to fail sometime. And this actually happened to me last week. My internet just turned off. It's kind of funny because the student was in Nashville, about 30 miles from me. Theirs cut out at the same time. I think the whole city lost it. Within 1 minute, now she was on Comcast. She couldn't get back on. But within 1 minute, I was on my phone hotspot and back in the lesson.
Yep.
If at all possible, have that backup option.
Yeah.
It really, really helps.
It really does. I know teachers who teach exclusively off of hotspots.
I've done
it. I mean, I wouldn't say go out and do that, but absolutely have that as an option.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing. It'll get the job done and it'll keep you moving forward.
I used to have 2 from 2 different carriers. The idea being, hopefully they both don't get knocked out. If they both get knocked out at the same time, we probably got bigger problems.
I was going to say, start running.
Yeah. And I even had for a while, now this is technical and I have a nerdy friend who set this up for me, but you can buy a thing called a TP-Link and put 2 different internet sources in and it will load balance that. And if one of them cuts out, it just relies on the other. Like there's so many options out there if you take some time to look into them.
Absolutely. And one of the things that like Ethernet cables have sort of died out. Literally, like my computer doesn't even have an Ethernet port. There are adapters though. So in the pinch, if that is what you're going to do, go get the adapter and plug it right in. Like that will help. Wi-Fi always has lag, no matter what. There is no lagless Wi-Fi. And even if you're paying for the top bundle, doesn't mean you're really getting the top bundle right now. It doesn't, they're saying that's what you're get up to. That's a good marketing scheme.
How they get you.
Yeah. It's like up to 1 billion gigabytes. Yeah. Theoretically, I guess,
Yeah. And just an example is I'm hardwired here. I'm in a MacBook Pro. I'm using the adapter. They're $15. And I've got great internet, but if I go wireless, I'm going to get 150 meg download. When I plug it in, I get 950.
Yeah.
Huge difference from one cable.
Yeah. That's literally the night and day. Like that's the difference between stutters, blurbs, and being just crystal clear, perfect the entire time.
Yeah. You're tired of all the.
Yep. Right. No, I love it because that's so true. And that is one of those things. I know people kind of like, oh yeah, fix the Wi-Fi. It's like, we know, like, obviously Wi-Fi is expensive and you can only do what you can do, but you do need to start there. Like that is the basis of what you're building your ship on. If you're building it on nothing, then there's not much more that everything else can actually do for you. So like I'd say spend the extra money on the Wi-Fi instead of the high-end speakers,
oh yeah, absolutely.
That kind of thing. Like if, don't get the MIDI piano, get the good Wi-Fi. Like that I think is definitely higher on the priority list.
And you're going to enjoy it with everything else too. You know, I like video games, Call of
Just
Duty,
enjoy
Command
your
and
Netflix
Conquer.
at high speeds.
Yeah, Mario Kart. It's all so much better.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like it is a win-win though, because that is one thing that you do use it for literally everything now. So,
Yeah.
and actually something to sort of a side note, but worth mentioning: if you're a self-employed or you run the business, you're like a self-employed or you are the business owner, that Wi-Fi is usually a business expense. Because if you're working at home and your office is your home, then that's tax deductible. So,
Yeah.
that's another avenue. Something that music teachers, I think specifically, we're really not trained in is the real business side of things. Like, hey, can I like that microphone you just bought? Tax deductible. That's a business expense. Like, I'm no expert on that, so don't come to me for tax advice, please.
We are not tax experts.
Yeah.
This is for entertainment purposes only.
All I'm saying is, but you know what I mean? Like the gear you are buying to run your studio is business expenses. Those aren't just frivolous purchases. Maybe guitar number 6 is, but the first one you could probably get away with.
And right down to your backdrop.
Absolutely.
If something is part of the decor, then that is part of your business. And I have this room is only used for business, but that's something that always obviously talk to your CPA, but that is most likely going to be something, just the picture on the wall that you can write off.
Absolutely. And those are the kinds of things that that's not necessarily what we're trying to help everybody with, but it's something to think about when you're getting yourself set up, when you're trying to run, like we're saying, the whole point of this is pro level studio. Not necessarily just getting your feet wet. We're saying get your feet wet, grab your computer, and you're good to go. That's all you need. But we're saying now, like, let's take this up a notch. Now, here's my personal setup. So, and I'll can you do this too in a second? I'd love you to just run down the gear you use. So for me, I have a MacBook Pro. I have a Blue Yeti microphone, just the $120. I don't know if there's like a model number, just Blue Yeti. Then I have a Focusrite Scarlett Duo interface, which is just like the one you were holding up earlier. I have one ring light, one $15 USB camera from Amazon. Doesn't even have a brand name on it. A MIDI piano for a 32 key MIDI keyboard, 2 Rocket KRK-8 speakers. Those I've had forever. Those were my recording speakers in college, but they are phenomenal speakers, so why not? A pedal board under my desk. It's a Pod HD 500X. That's a digital pedal board, so I can run my guitar into it and has amp simulators. A swing arm with a 57, or my other vocal mic, which has gone missing. That is and then of course a guitar. And that guitar has a MIDI pickup on the guitar. So you don't need all of this. But this is all the stuff that I use during lessons. So the speakers for high quality, so I can hear my students well. 2 options for microphones, so I could go direct, or I can give the students just a general, like right now you're hearing my normal Blue Yeti. If I switch it to the other one, it's this direct signal, and you'd be able to hear the guitar coming through the same audio channel. MIDI instruments, so that I can play things and show on screen exactly what I'm actually doing. So if the student can't see my hands, or the angle is hard, or like you might be doing a really complicated chord shape that your fingers are overlapping, so it doesn't really translate. So I can quickly grab that guitar, I can play it on there, and it'll print it on screen. So things like that. Yeah, like that's the kind of thing with technology. You can take your studio, like I obviously use Muzie for all of this, and we've got MIDI instruments built in. So for me, that guitar over there, if I strum a G chord, the student sees the notes on a guitar neck light up that I just played. Or if I play a scale, they light up on the guitar, so the student can emulate that, without needing to be staring at the screen trying to see my fingers and me moving back and forth all the time and stuff like that. So, I just sort of wanted to give people a rundown. Like, this is definitely a more overkill setup. You definitely don't need 2 microphone options and 2 camera options and 2 speaker options and 2 different MIDI. I do it all because, of course, I'm testing it all for the platform and stuff like that. But in my actual lessons. MIDI guitar, pedal board, direct microphone, speakers, 2 cameras, ring light, interface. Like, I use all of that. That's actually used in my classes. I even have a writing pad, a digital pencil called an XP pen. You can write, and it will write on the whiteboard, so that I don't use my mouse. I just write with a pencil on a piece of plastic on my desk.
I want that.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's this cool. Let me see. It's this little guy. He's just this little USB plugged in. You just sit it on your desk, and it has a pencil that you just draw on it, and it takes over your mouse controls, so you can just draw and annotate. It makes annotating a score so much easier. So that
your art.
Yeah, right. You're trying to like draw a chord chart instead of trying to like drag and drop, and you just draw circles and you're good to go.
Yeah. What's the symbol for a major 7th chord? I don't have to write it on a paper and hold it up anymore. Right? I'm getting one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I just wanted to highlight what I personally use, because of course I do teach. We are teachers as well. So I just that's what do you use? Just literally listing it down. What's your
So MacBook Pro, I'm using the MacBook Pro camera. I've always been happy with that. I told you I put in the music group months ago, I bought into that Indiegogo for the center cam. It is shipped right now. So cool. Everybody watch the music teachers group. I'm going to put up a review there. So I might start using that, but I'm using MacBook Pro camera. I am hardwired for better internet. And the microphone here, this is an Audio Technica AT4040. Not an expensive mic, but not a cheap one either. They've been about $300 since the 80s. And actually recently are more like $270. Used ones are also about $300.
It's like the studio.
It's the studio workhorse. They last forever. So I've got that on the arm here. Like I showed earlier, I've got 2 ring lights on an arm as well. And that works really incredibly well. My lighting system is several things. I've got a window in front of me. It's overcast today, so what everybody's seeing is pretty close to what I would have at night. So the 2 ring lights, overhead lights, just to make the whole scene. If you don't have your wall lit up enough, it looks very pixelated, even though it's not really what's happening. So I've got that. On top of that, my monitors are bright. That's adding to the light. I'm actually getting some straight ahead light from both monitors. So running a Asus monitor, not a super fancy one, but an Asus monitor. It's about this big, so I can have all my stuff up if I'm reading a score or whatever. I've got the Focusrite, just like yours, I think. I've got the 2-channel one down here actually installed. Not expensive. And I'm using, and you don't need to spend this kind of money. I bought these from back when I used to tour, but I'm using Ultimate Ears molded in-ear monitors. And I really like that for 2 reasons. One is I never have to worry about if I've cranked up my speakers too much, the student hearing that. But the other is that for any of you who have been using headphones and stuff, you tend to talk really loud because you can't hear yourself and you wear out your voice. You're not teaching 6 lessons in a day yelling. This has monitoring. I can hear how loud my instrument is. I can hear if my instrument and my voice are out of balance. And if I need to move the mic to fix that, makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing on the creating the in-person experience is if you're using headphones, I strongly recommend you get ones like this that come up behind your ear, behind your head, just what live performing musicians use. Those, you can barely see that they're there. Anything that reminds somebody you're not in person takes away from that experience. So don't go with the helicopter pilot.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's something that I see a lot of, or like even the one with the mouthpiece swinging down. Like I don't think it. I understand why, because it seems simple and easy, one unit that does everything, but it is distracting. It takes you out of it's like breaking the 4th wall in a movie. You know what I mean? It's like you feel like you're not there anymore.
I'll add on the equipment too. If viewers want to go to my website, lessonbusiness.com, you can download a guide called The Musician's Guide to Operating or Setting Up a Pro Level Studio on a Budget. And it goes through all the options that you have, a lot of the things we've talked about today, but it shows exact models. this is the ring light I use. If you want the monitor I'm using, there's links to all of those things. And it goes in depth about a lot of the things we've talked about. Now, because there's 2 of us in this session, you got both of our thoughts.
Yep.
But if you want something that you can download and follow a guide that goes over a lot of this stuff to help supplement that, then go to my website. It's totally free. You can download it there. If I can pitch Muzie for a second too, Muzie.Live, almost all of you probably are already using it because that's where we put out this most of the ads for this thing to come and watch it. But I used Skype, I used FaceTime, Zoom, all of that. And especially when Skype and Zoom became the main things, and that's what everybody wanted to use, Skype was okay. And it had recording options, but I hated it. My student could record me anytime they wanted to. I can't control what's out there. I'd be like scratching my nose, and they've got a video of it.
Yep.
Zoom, this is the biggest problem. With Zoom, you have to go through this complicated process to turn on original sound, or else you start playing and it sounds like this. So you play something da 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 da, and I don't think it's possible to turn that on an iPad. I've never found it. And almost no student has ever figured out how to set it up so you can't hear them. So I came looking for this. I told you when we first met, I was so frustrated because Zoom added that annoying voice that goes, recording now in process, louder than anything I could say. So just a total pitch. Sam didn't ask me to do this, but when I get excited about products, I can't help myself. I play Pava mandolins. Just drop me a line. You'll hear about this for an hour. It changed everything for me with all the tools and just not having to deal with those audio problems. So check it out. You'll really be glad you did.
Awesome. Thank you. I am genuinely glad that it is solving problems. And, that's really what it's there for, is we wanted it. That's one thing, just to quickly jump on that kind of little self-promotion-y thing, but just worth mentioning, because I don't think this ever gets really brought up, is that Muzie was built pre-pandemic. This was not a response to the pandemic, which I think is important in the sense that, we've been working on this kind of technology and working with teachers for over 6 years now. And so, you've been teaching online for a really long time. This isn't just 2020 hit and we see an opportunity. It was genuinely more of a natural, sort of occurrence, which actually was kind of nice because that led us to a lot of more genuine and real interactions with people that has helped kind of build the product to what it actually is today. So I have to say thank you backwards for providing the feedback and actually using it and passing it along to people.
It's amazing. Another thing that I really appreciate that you all do is that we can submit requests for things. And I've seen new features that I've seen the requests.
Yeah.
You ask in the group and I see people requesting these things and they appear. And I told you this shortly after starting. I said, I've tried to talk to Zoom before, and they literally will not talk to me. I am not allowed to talk to someone on the phone unless I buy a really expensive package.
Yeah.
So
our most expensive package is free. And if you call me, you're calling my cell phone. So, you're going to get real people. And I think it's important because I'm a music teacher at heart. I'm a musician. I am in the world as well. So it's not only do I want to I want to solve my own problems as well as help solve all the other problems for teachers, So it's one of those things where it's coming from a place of genuine, or just genuine, I needed it too. I've genuinely used my product. I have a lesson later today, in 2 hours. I will be using this, with them and doing everything we've just talked about. And so I think it's important where, I was saying earlier, in a lot of classes or courses, you might feel well, how is this actually actionable? When can I apply this? With this kind of stuff, I think we're really trying to say is right here, right now. This is not a wait till next week kind of thing. You've got Google. If you've got computer, you can start your lessons. If you can get a student, that means you could take a little bit of that income from that student to buy yourself a ring light. Then you can get yourself another student. And then, you know, maybe for every student you get, you reward yourself with a new little piece of the puzzle or something. You know, you have to figure out how it will work for you. You know, finances are finances. That's going to be different for everybody. So there's no cut and dry. But what you will see, and like this is a guarantee, is as you grow your business, and if you are doing a good job at that, you'll see that more people will come to you. Your business will in fact grow. You will make more money. The money you make can be used to enhance the quality of your lessons. The quality of your lessons will bring more people through the door. More people through the door will bring you more money, and around we go.
Yeah.
You know, so that's at least, and we've both seen it. We've both done it, and we've both seen it. So, you know, it's very accessible.
And there really is so much value in taking the time to, like, thank you for everybody who came to watch this. There is such a huge value in taking the time to learn this stuff. And it's not just this. There's all these things you can learn about teaching, about advertising. There's just so many things that you get all those ducks in a row. And it really, just like you were saying, we get this snowball, and it can turn into a very significant amount of money for a very small amount of hours actually spent teaching every week.
Absolutely. I think people, this probably is not, I'm just going to say, I don't think I've ever said this publicly. So if this is the end of my career, then so be it. I always felt that teaching was the backup. That teaching was I failed at being a performer, so therefore I guess I'll go and teach. I couldn't have been more wrong, but that's how I felt before I actually ever taught anybody anything. That was like when I was in college and I was trying to be a musician. I wanted to tour. Then you realize you can do both. You can actually do a lot. You can do more. And one of those things is you don't need to teach a roster of 90 students to be very successful. You can teach 20 students, 1 hour a week. That's 20 hours. You're working less than most people, but you're charging $100 an hour. You're now making more than all your friends. You're teaching. You are literally working half the amount of time. Your schedule is your own. You could even cram those into 3 days if you really wanted to, and take 4 days off every week. You know,
that's what I do. 3 days, 6 lessons each.
There you go. So that's the perfect example. That's my dream scenario right there. I do a similar this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for me. And I only let people in lessons for those slots, and I go from there. But is it, you know what I mean? Like, having that flexibility and being able to grow in that way doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and buy a studio location and hire 30 more teachers. You absolutely can. If that's the path you want to take and you're trying to grow into a studio that's globally recognized, then fantastic, go for it. But if you're just trying to build your brand to the point where you're holding a small roster of really dedicated students, and you're charging a hell of a lot for it, but you're providing for that cost, then that is a very, very viable business model. And I think we both know many people that are doing it like that.
And like you mentioned, you know, it really is not failing to teach. And I hate that whole those who do.
I know, right?
Who can't teach. You know, in the Practice of Practice, Jonathan Harnum's book, he quotes somebody saying, "Those who can and understand teach." But, you know, people do tend to look at it as, oh, I can't have my career as a musician. It is exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
It finance your dream.
That's exactly what it does. It does.
I made a record in 2020, poor timing. I released it anyway because I was making it for me and I wanted to. $25,000. If I was just a gigging musician, that never would have happened.
Yeah, never.
Never would have hired a publicist, wouldn't have gotten a good mastering engineer, wouldn't have gotten musicians that I'm still excited I got to play with my heroes.
Yeah.
Because I teach lessons and can afford it. They play that music on the radio. It is financing my dreams, and it will continue to do that. And for all these musicians sitting at home, like barely keeping the lights on, you're not going to make it as a musician that way anyway. So you might as well finance your dream and then make it as a musician.
That snip it, copy it, make it in an NFT and sell it to the world. That should be like the first thing that's given to every music student in college. is just you saying that sentence. Is you're not going to make it necessarily as just a musician, because nobody is. No, not even the most famous musicians are just musicians. So like that is true. You never will make it just playing music.
Yeah.
But there are Muzie is my example. So when I felt like I failed, I was scrounging to find this tether to the music world, that something that would still keep me involved, but didn't. And Muzie sort of turned into that thing. I mean, fortunately, like teaching, of course, as well. But Muzie at the time was like the predecessor to it, was that sort of bridge for me, keeping me hooked to the music world so that I felt like I was still involved in some way. And it was funny because I'd say after college, and maybe the first 5 years after college, I felt like all of my friends, they literally were all in Nashville having fun and playing shows every night and going on tours. And I felt like I had gone from college to suburban, like settle down in 3 seconds. And I thought I'd like made the worst decision of my life. But now what I realized I'd actually done was set myself up beautifully for the future. Because I have a lot of those friends who are now coming to me and going, hey, so tell me more about teaching. How can I do this? How much can I make? When can I do it? I have one friend, really good friend of mine, who is a touring musician in Nashville, plays gigs pretty much every night of the week. And we're saying, he's like, but I need something that's stable and consistent. And he's like, but I can't do, I need my weekends and my nights because that's when I'm gigging. So I was like, okay, well, I personally teach homeschool students in the mornings from 10 o'clock to noon. I do a bunch of homeschool lessons. So I was like, why don't you just go and do that? And now he said that's exactly what he's doing. He's going to set up his business to directly target kids that homeschool situations so that he has his evenings, and he's only going to teach a couple days a week, and that kind of flexibility allows him to then go out on the nights, play those gigs, and still run after that dream. But now he's not valeting cars or working at Subway or something.
Yeah, I worked in a muffin shop when I moved to Nashville, $8 an hour, and they wouldn't even put me on the payroll. So it's like, what are you going to do with that? It didn't last long. Then I made the huge mistake of going and working. I call them lesson mills, the strip mall music store, where they did not care at all if I made money. They only cared if they did.
Yes.
In fact, I was responsible for chasing down my own payments and was expected to teach anyway without getting paid. Anyway, that was horrible. A student talked me into this online thing. They really wanted to take a lesson from me. They lived in Texas, where I'm from. And finally I gave in, and I was just, I taught the first lesson, and it was funny. I didn't know we had hung up yet, or we had not hung up yet, but the first lesson finished and I just went, all right. And I hear her laughing on the other end. She probably still thinks I was really happy that we were done. But I realized this is something I can do. I can tap into the entire world as long as they're in a close enough time zone to make it work. So 6-8 hours can work. And in my case, I only wanted 20, 25 students. That's a big world out there. You only need 20.
Right. That's the thing. On my street alone, there's got to be 7-8 kids that are like, and I know 4 of them play instruments. You know what I mean? It's like that's just this one road. There's 1,000 of these roads in my town, and then there's 1,000 of these towns in the state, and then you know what I mean? Like, there's no shortage of people out there for you to find. Actually, just to jump on to, we just got some questions through if you want to.
Oh, great. Yes.
So one was actually about the homeschool thing. So I teach a lot of homeschool kids, and this is relevant to quite a lot, but Facebook groups has been my go-to for the homeschool network. Now, the nice thing about homeschool networks is there's a couple ways to usually get to them. So there's a couple of different kinds of homeschooling networks. So just to sort of briefly explain how it works, and obviously different countries will probably have different setups as well, but there's homeschooled, where you're individually taught like by mom or dad, and you just take classes. There's also communal homeschooling, where there's actually like the parents take like each like that mom does math, that mom does science, that dad does French or something. And then the kids go around as a group to all of the different classes. And then there's homeschool networks where they use curriculum and things built out through the network, and they'll have online teachers that provide the curriculum that parents can't teach. So that's where we come in. So there's a couple ways you can approach it. There is you could go in as just a freelance teacher that's offering music lessons, and great. The other is you could find out what the certification for the music curriculum is for your homeschool networks and see if you can become a certified teacher for that. That would mean that the students actually get credited for the classes that they're taking with you. You become their band teacher. So it becomes an avenue of income that is tied to their schooling, so their parents will definitely pay for it. And it becomes a cheap alternative to something the parents probably could never, like if they're not musical, they're not going to be able to. That's probably the one subject that I don't think you could just dive in and teach it. So just as far as homeschool networks go, the nice thing about them is they are literally a network. Once one parent is satisfied with what you do, that's, for me, it was as simple as that. One parent was like, "You're great. I'm going to go tell all my other moms." And that was the end of the story. It was as simple as, like, I didn't even realize how, like, at some point I was like, "Oh, where do you go to school?" And he was "Oh, I'm homeschooled. I was like, "Oh," and then I didn't even really put it together until after the fact initially. But I found that to be a very consistent place to find students. Just if it was based off a question, but I sort of thought that'd be interesting. I know you teach older students, but that's just another avenue that I found been pretty effective.
Yeah. Finding a niche is so important, and one that feeds itself. So my demographic is boomers and 20 years younger to 20 years older, that general thing. Most of them are doctors, lawyers, veterinarians, business owners. My rate is a drop in the bucket to their weekly budget. It means nothing. But I found a niche that feeds itself. I teach music camps. All those people know each other. Almost all my students know each other and go to the same music camps. If you can find a already built community to tap into, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. That's actually, we were talking before the call that I had a professor in college who I actually met from, so it's actually kind of funny. So two things. I went to a music camp as a kid, and they hired guitar teachers to come in and teach the guitar curriculum at the camp. So one of the guys they hired was a Berklee professor, and the other guy they hired was just a local music teacher. After the camp, I took lessons from the local music teacher for the next 5 years, and he's still a very good friend of mine, and he is who I would credit with me being able to play the instrument at all. And then the professor I ended up taking classes from in college, and so it's one of those things where, like, and I think they would say the same, like, especially the local music teacher, like, he taught that summer camp for 1 week, and that was a hive of students looking for music lessons, so that it was as simple as being like, "Oh wait, I want to take more lessons with you," and boom, another student on his list. So I think anything like that you can get out in front of is fantastic. The other thing that I remember, this was offered at my school growing up. I haven't done this personally, so I don't. It's just take this one with a grain of salt. Maybe you could speak to it, but teachers being hired by the public school to give lessons after school to the band students. The parents paid for the lessons, but they paid like through the school basically. And so the person was like compensated, for teaching all these. So it'd be like a flute teacher would come in and offer flute lessons to all of the kids that were in the flute section. And then a couple of them would take the private lessons once a week after school, and they would just be in the band room, just over there in the corner. Now, of course, online, because, but same kind of concept. That's another avenue of, putting yourself in something that's already established so that you can benefit from the student base.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, I think that's a couple of things like that are very important. One other question that I think we've sort of gone over this a little bit, but just on a more specific note, and as you mentioned, you have the downloadable blueprint of gear and setup that people can take a look at from your website. But we had a question sort of specifically about mixers and interfaces.
Okay.
And so one thing, basically the question was just any recommendations and how to deal with if you have like a volume problems or things like that. Just one quick tidbit is I was working with someone the other day, a drum teacher, and we basically concluded mixer was the best scenario there because they were able to pre-mix everything and then take all the channels out and send them through. A mixer that has an interface built into it, of course. And that was able to then take the signal out, and they could pre-mix all their channels ahead of time. The other options, of course, are normal interfaces where you basically just have a master control for the volume. Just you've got obviously a write-up on all of this, but do you have any just specific thoughts on interfaces and the like?
I am a one mic operation, and that's something to consider too with any of my advice is that it is based on what I do. So if you play trombone or something, I can't really tell you what to do, but in the guide, you can get ideas that will help you figure out what you need to do when you mix your own knowledge. So because I'm a one mic person, I am a one mixer knob person. And that's it. And I ride that knob all the time. So like you all may have heard my toddler for a minute, but there was also a minute you didn't hear it at all because I turned that knob off.
Okay.
I have considered going to a second mic for just because sometimes it's hard with fiddle and mandolin and all that just to get one in the right place. And if I did, I could see it being a pretty attractive option to have a mixer that you all get it all in line here. I mean, you could do that with the big brother of this one. You've got 2 channels. You can mix it. It goes into my ears here. I know exactly what's going in that mic. And there's a lot you can do on your end to make everything sound good. You send one channel out. That's the big bluegrass music thing that you do because the sound people are almost always terrible. Is you bring your own mixer and they get a right and a left. And that's
it. No worries about what's. I like it. Take control of your own sound.
Yeah. So that's not much to add to what you had to say because that's definitely something in your world you'd know a lot more about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's helpful though. I think that's a very valuable point of information is that if you don't need more, don't. Like this setup that I explained, probably not ideal for everybody. Like you probably don't need a standing desk with a swinging microphone with all this other stuff. Like you really don't need all of that. Even to run a pro level studio, you don't need every single piece. You know, and I think you'll find the pieces that you are most valuable to you. You know, I think we'd probably agree on like the short list of good microphone, good lights, good computer. You know, I think those 3 things are the 3 on the top. And then everything else is a little bit more personal preference after that.
Yeah. And you can start with stuff you have around the house. Plenty of people teach with a lamp that they maybe take the shade off of or turn and just put it right there.
The ring light before the ring light.
Yeah.
This idea lamp that's got this like swivelly head is basically like a overly bright single point of light. It's got a bendy arm so you can put it anywhere you want it. That was my ring light before I actually had a ring light, you know?
Perfect.
And I didn't get a ring light for a long time. You know, like this stuff has taken years to accumulate. This isn't, and I mean, like, I've had the speakers for over 10 years. The MIDI keyboard I've had since college. So I've had that for 7 or 8 years. I've had the SM57 for maybe 15 years, you know, like some of this stuff is really old. Like I didn't buy most of this stuff for teaching. Like I just, as a musician, I've had gear around, you know, I used to record my own stuff, things like that. So I've had interfaces and mics and cables. And so I just pickpocketed myself basically until I had some amalgamated thing to work. And then I started being like, okay, well, how can I now, like personally, my light comes from the right. There is no light from the left. So my ring light needs to be over here on the left side of the screen, you know? So your personal setup will dictate a lot about what is and isn't needed. Like you're saying, your light comes directly at you. So having a right and left is really helpful. so that it can fill in that space. Where for me, if I have one on the right, my right side would be just overblown. So, part of what we're trying to get to is that our advice, our knowledge is limited to our world and scope, but you can take all of this and apply the bits that are needed to what you're trying to work on.
Yeah, and this gear will last for a long time. Now, I don't know how long my $25 ring lights are going to last, but probably still for years.
Yeah.
The mic, I'll never need another one unless I drop it, and then they can fix it.
Yep. This SM57 has been literally rolled downstairs.
Oh yeah, you can throw those.
Yeah, I mean, we used to bring this one gigging all the time, like just to have a backup microphone. So it's been thrown around tour bags for a decade. It's like the gear you buy, and actually that's actually something worth mentioning though, is that if you need something to just get going, great. But if I would consider buying the better versions when it comes to musical equipment to make sure you actually are getting yourself. Actually, a friend of mine was talking about interfaces the other day. We were going back and forth for hours trying to figure out what would work. And we concluded the best one was this Focusrite that has compressors built into that you can manually control. And like that, because he's a drummer, is the perfect interface for him. Perfect. Yeah. Now that for me, way overkill. Like not needed at all. So, but that interface will last 10, 15 years, that's like the one I've got. I have one in the closet. I just don't use it anymore because it's physically so big. But it's 15 years old and it works perfectly fine. It's just my desk literally can't hold it anymore. So
yeah, definitely. I am thinking about upgrading to an interface with compression because my fiddle's so loud and I tend to be soft-spoken.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll overdrive it. So I'm gonna have to see. I'm already spending money. We mentioned it's just ongoing. I mentioned this at the very beginning, but for anybody tuning in, I was actually this morning still adjusting my studio with Sawzall, which was fun. You can check out the video. Go join the Muzie Teachers group on Facebook. You can watch the video there or on my Lesson Business Blueprint page. But this is ongoing and it's super fun. And it's just something that you're probably not going to have in a day and you shouldn't worry about it. Tons of people start out with very little. You build it up over time. And I love that idea that you mentioned of, if you can wait to buy the right one, do it. Because I've bought so much stuff that was the $20 version of something that the $50 version would have lasted forever. And now I've bought 3 of the $20 version.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, it's not always an option, but if you can make it, do it. If you can, if you spend a little bit extra more and have the equipment that's good, that will also put you at the peace of mind knowing that you can spend your focus back on the teaching and not on, is that microphone really, like we've all been there with the phone charger that you've got to hold your phone at like the perfect angle. And if you even flinch, you are now not going to get a charge ever again. We all know that scenario, right? So don't make that your teaching scenario. Like, don't be sitting there with the power cord to your laptop with like duct tape wrapped around it, like holding it up, pinched like this, being like, yeah, we still have power. Let me just duct tape this. Don't do that to yourself. Spend the extra $5 and get the right thing so that your peace of mind and your focus is back at its student. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we're here for, right? Is actually something I think would be a good way of sort of summarizing a lot of this is all of the technology we're talking about, all the tools, all the add-ons, all the desks and gizmos is to actually create less for you to do. It's so that your focus can go back to just teaching. Like that's what Musie's there for. We try to automate as much of the other stuff as possible so that when you're in a class with a student and you're conducting lessons, that is all you're doing. You're not also trying to email the notes to the mom for later on and then send reminders for the next lesson and make sure the other kids are logged in. You know what I mean? Like there's too much. It's very
emailing recordings.
Yes, right.
Hate it.
That could be half your afternoon. Like this, if I do 5 lessons back to back, and they're all an hour long, I started at noon. It's now 6 o'clock. I'm sitting down and now I'm like, okay, well, what did I do with that first student? Okay, what recordings did they need? What files did, by the 5th student, you're like, I don't remember. I've obviously forgotten to send something to somebody in this mess,
Yeah. And they
So
often want to practice immediately after their
yeah,
lesson.
yeah, that's when you're most motivated to get to work, because they've got the guitar or the instrument in hand. They just learnt the thing. They got the momentum to keep going. So if you've got to delay that momentum and then spend 3 hours of your own day trying to catch back up, then you're going to burn yourself out pretty quickly, So
It makes your hourly rate less than you thought it was.
absolutely, yeah, because your hour becomes you now doing admin work for them instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Something a lot of teachers I don't think about. I don't think, or at least personally, it was never sort of explained to me that way growing up, that the extra admin work is still hours you're working, that the pay that you got from the lessons has to cover those hours as well. It's not just the hour that you're in the lesson. It's the however much prep time that you're putting into your class. And basically the nice thing is, with all the, once you've got everything set up, like for me, because I'm so busy running Muzie, my lessons are as simple as, it's 2 minutes before class and I'm on a call. Like I might be on a Muzie demo working with someone through the product, and I have a lesson in 2 minutes, and I'll be wrapping that up and rolling into the class and conducting the lesson and then going right back to another business call. And then doing that throughout the week. Well, I don't necessarily have time to do a lot of extra stuff for the students, when they might need it then and there. So by automating so much stuff and building it in a way that is efficient, I now don't need to actually put much time in, and the students are still getting the same quality lessons. I'm still giving them their assignments. They're at the end of class, they're getting recordings from lessons. They're getting annotated documents. They're getting tons of material to practice. They've got a direct line of communication to me if they do need me for something, so I am there, but I don't actually have to do anything. So it's it's a fantastic way of, like you're saying, teaching might only be one of your things. You might teach, you might write albums, you might run a software company, you might do 50 other different jobs that, it doesn't have to be your only stream of income or your only focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the maybe the only real big drawback to teaching is we are trading our time for money.
Yeah.
So how much time are you going to trade for how much money? If you can save 2 hours a week, that you got that time back. And that is a way we can't really scale as music teachers unless you're going to trade someone else's time for that money. So get some of your time back. One of the reasons we do this is, I want to play video games for 2 hours tonight, and I'm going to because I can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not to feel guilty about it, right? Like you can sit down at the video games and be like, I earned these 2 hours because I've done my job. I've paid the bills. I'm good to go. Students are happy. And that's exactly where you want to find yourself. Like, I think one thing, and musicians were probably the guiltiest of this kind of thing, is like craving the stardom, the larger than life lifestyle. And like we're saying, I think people don't realize that music teaching can provide that. I know many music teachers who make more money than lawyers and doctors. So take it as you will, but like, hey, one of them's doing their own thing in their own schedule. The other is working a 200-hour work week. It's, I think quality of life for someone who is taking all of this advice in could be phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. It's a great career to build, and you can have the nice things as a musician. You can have the nice things that you thought you would never have.
Yeah.
You can drive a nice car if you want to.
Yep.
You can fly in comfort in the big chairs in the front if that's what you really want to do. There's so much available to you. You can live in a nicer house. All of the things that people are hoping someday they'll get out of performing, you can have that and perform too.
Yeah. And that's, I like what you're saying earlier, is the fact that this is really how you're going to fund those other passion projects. Like, I can Muzie in the beginning. I mean, software companies don't make money on day one. how else are you going to fund it? Right. Like you have to do something else, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like that, you know, I can't just build a piece of software, throw it out the window and expect people to buy it and money to roll in. I was teaching music lessons the entire time that I've been teaching longer than Muzie.Live's been around. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, oh, we built Muzie and then decided to do some teaching on the side there, you know? So I think people don't, you know, the way you actually keep your quality of life is the teaching. Like that's actually the bread and butter for a lot of people. Like if you're building a business or you're trying to do something, you know, creative, then having that constant stream of income at least allows you the comfort and time and ability to focus on those other projects.
It does, and it just allows you want to spend time with your family, which I have got to sign off in about 5 minutes
no worries,
to take my toddler, but I can do that. I'm going to keep my toddler this afternoon because I have the time. I'm not grinding it out at a desk job somewhere, although I do sit at a desk. But it's different.
Hey, your desk has a chessboard next to it. You know what I mean?
It does.
when you're distracted, like for you, instead of the endless scrolling through Instagram that everyone's doing at their desk, you can just swing around, practice a couple opening moves and swing back and get back to work, you know?
Exactly.
Love that.
It's a good life doing this. And for those of you who are thinking about getting into it or have started and you're getting a little discouraged, it is worth your time. On that note, if any of you out there are looking for some help, there are a lot of places that you can go and learn stuff. And one of them is my course, Lesson Business Blueprint, that I released just a few months ago. And it's a step-by-step course that takes you from everything from if you've never taught a lesson before, all the way to setting up your studio, communicating with students, setting up your systems, templates for when you've got to email a new student, social media posts that you can cut and paste for engagement. And then it looks into the future. It'll teach you how to plan for the future with your business through things like masterminds and SWOT analysis. So if you're looking for a all-included method to learn every aspect of this, no matter where you're starting, whether you're just started or you've already been teaching for a long time, I hope you'll check out the course. It can help you reach your goals a lot faster.
Absolutely.
And on the, like I said, everybody else is probably already on Muzie, but in the course, I tell you, this was actually before me and Sam really knew each other. In the course, I have a video on why you should do Muzie, and it's all these reasons we've just been talking about.
Awesome. Yeah. And I have to second that is if you're looking at growing your studio, you're looking at teaching anything you want to teach online, go check out Nate's Lesson Business Building. It's the Lesson Business Blueprint. And
that's lessonbusiness.com.
There you go. And Nate has everything you need.
And you are all welcome too to reach out with questions. You can email me or I'm in the Muzie group. Ask questions there. We're all happy to help you.
Absolutely. If you've got anything else, feel free to drop it in. But I think that's a fantastic place for us to probably wrap up. Is, you know, if anyone out there is looking to grow your studio, you want to learn more about what we've been talking about for the last hour and a half, go check out what Nate's offering. It really is fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for doing this session, Sam. I had such a fun time. I feel like I've been sitting here for 15 minutes.
I know, it really does fly by.
But yeah, thanks for doing this. I just can't stop nerding out on this stuff, and you can't either. So I really appreciate the chance to come and chat.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See all y'all later.
See ya.